Hi friends, welcome back to Faith and Error Homestead. My name is Jaylee and today we are actually in the kitchen. Today's Tuesday and it's milk pickup day for me. If you are new here, I am part of a raw milk CSA locally here in upstate New York, Western New York. And every other Tuesday I pick up 2.5 gallons of raw milk and they come in half-gallon glass mason jars. So today is pickup, which means in a few hours I'm going to leave to go pick up 5 jars of milk. Here I have a half a jar and 2 full jars that I haven't had the chance to go through from last pickup. And so I just wanted to make a video showing you what I do with that. I'm going to teach you how to make cottage cheese. It's an excellent way to use up extra milk, and the best part, it doesn't have to be raw. You can use store-bought milk to make cottage cheese, and I'm going to show you how. So before we get into that here, this is the jar that I've been drinking out of. I actually just had some, but I'm leaving here in just a couple hours to go get more. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this into my stainless steel pot. And then I like to fill my jars up with cold water and let them sit before I wash them, because raw milk tends to be very sticky, and letting it soak in the cold water helps it release from the jar. Now here is a container, a Tupperware container with cream. What I've been doing, because the butter, the farm has been running low on butter and cream, and also it's expensive anyway, so I have been skimming the cream off of the jars of milk as I open them. Mind you, I keep these closed until it's time for me to start using them. I've not opened these. These have been closed since the farm filled them, and I've not opened them. So this is fresh still. I could open this and it would still taste like brand new raw milk. But as I open them, I skim off the cream and I put it in a container so that on Tuesday, before I go pick up more, I can use the cream to make butter. And so I have my stand mixer here. I'm going to go ahead and pour in the cream that I've already been skimming. And then these jars I'm going to use to make cottage cheese, but I don't necessarily need the cream to make the cottage cheese. I don't need it. And I'd much rather have it be butter than cottage cheese. I mean, think about value added. I think butter is a lot more valuable than cottage cheese, personally. And so I would much rather the cream go towards that. So I'm going to skim off the cream in these jars. Okay, and then it's hard to get every last drop of it because it floats on top of the milk, and I don't want to get too much milk in here. I want just cream. So I'm going to shake this, because if it's not going to be butter, then I want it to be cottage cheese, because the alternative is it getting washed out in the sink. So I want to try to get the cream off the side of the jar. I'm going to pour that in my pot. Alright, and this is the third jar here. Just going to pour it in. Ooh, that is close. I actually think that's probably too close. I'll have to get a bigger pot. The most I've ever done is 2 jars, and I had 2.5 jars this time. So you'll see that as you heat the milk up on the stove, it rises a bit, and I don't have enough leeway here, I don't believe. Okay, perfect. So normally when I'm in the kitchen and I'm doing this, I'll have these going simultaneously. So I will take this over to the stove, and then I'll have the butter going in the background. That's quite loud, and I'm not finished talking to you, so I'll wait and do that after we get going on the cottage cheese. So let's take this over to the stove. Okay, a few things. First, we're over here at the stove, and I'm going to chat with you for a second, but I have this on medium heat, and it's coming up to temperature. I guess theoretically you could put it on high. I have a gas range, so this is on a flame, and I very rarely put things on high heat, like almost never, because you don't want your milk to burn, and if you burn your milk, you have to throw it out, and you are out of luck. So let's just not do that. So I've got it on medium heat, and it'll come up to temperature. This is the longest part. I don't want to say hardest because it's easy, but the longest part, you have to bring the milk up to 190 degrees. So I have a thermometer here. This is just, I don't even know, I use it for both temping liquids and for temping meat, and I've used it to temp bread before. So I just use this all around, and it's got this great little thing here. So I just turn it on, and I just hook it right onto the side here, and you can beautifully track the temperature and keep up with the temperature of the milk, and that way it doesn't get away from you. You need it to be 190 degrees. If it doesn't hit 190, you may not get a curdle. And then obviously you don't really need to go beyond 190 because there's a chance you could burn it. It just doesn't need to get that hot. So I have a spoon here. I like to use just a plastic slotted spoon. This is my cottage cheese spoon. I will give this a stir occasionally to make sure that nothing is sticking, especially because this is raw milk that still has some of the cream in it. I just don't want anything to stick. And so I will give it the occasional stir and just make sure that everything is looking good. And I'll let it do its thing. And it takes, on medium heat, it takes probably, I'm guessing, I've never counted, I think about 20 minutes probably to come up to temperature to the 190 degrees. And you could turn it up a little more. I taught my mom how to do this in person. She has an electric flat top range, and she needed to have hers on high to get it up to the 190 degrees, and we needed to stir it really frequently. So it just depends on your range. While this is going, I want to talk to you for a second about cottage cheese and why you would even bother making it. I know cottage cheese is decently affordable. It's not like the most expensive grocery item. The cottage cheese that I used to buy, under the ingredients, it has guar gum, xanthan gum, locust bean gum. And that's a really good brand. Let me look at some of these. This one has carbon dioxide to preserve freshness, vitamin A, palmitate. The Crowley brand, which I've seen before, it has potassium hydroxide, potassium sorbate, carbon dioxide, guar gum, carrageenan, locust bean gum, phosphoric acid, cornstarch, so whey protein concentrate. So anyway, my point is, and I actually clicked on two that were decent. The Good Culture brand looked fine, and surprisingly, Daisy, it just says cultured skim milk, cream, and salt. So I guess there are some decent brands out there. But I was surprised to see that the one that I used to purchase had all those gums in them. And so if you have the resources to make it yourself, why not, you know? And again, the reason I do it is because I have extra milk. This is my solution to being left with extra milk. So if you're watching this and you have a dairy animal and you have extra milk, making cottage cheese is such a good way to use up that extra milk. If your kids like cottage cheese, then you can use store-bought milk. It works the same. I haven't tried using ultra high temp pasteurization, the UHT labeled milk, to make this. I don't see why it wouldn't work, but maybe it wouldn't. I just always avoid the UHT milk. It's not good for you. Everything in it is dead. Just get, regular milk from the store if that's what you need to do. But yeah, this is a great one because you can use both pasteurized milk and raw milk. I've done it both ways. So just to give you an idea, I did the butter. I finished talking to you and I started my mixer, and I just kind of went back and forth between stirring and watching it, and my butter's done. It's still in the mixer. I still have to rinse it and everything, but it's done, and we're sitting at 155. So it does. It takes a little while to get up to temperature. This is definitely the longest part. I guess the longest / hardest part, because you do have to stand here. We are going to let this sit for 30 minutes, which I'll get to in a second. So I guess technically that's the longest, but that part's very hands-off. For this part, you really need to stand here and watch it. You've got to stir it. You've got to make sure it doesn't burn. And then as soon as it hits 190, we turn off the heat. And so you got to be right here for that. So that does take a second. But if you're in the kitchen and you're doing other things, it's no big deal at all. Okay, we're close. We're almost at 180 here. So I want to tell you what our next step is going to be. So once your milk hits 190, you can turn the heat off. You should turn the heat off. And now you have to add your acid. So you can do lemon juice or vinegar. I've never tried the lemon juice. I just feel like it would impart a bit of a flavor that I don't want. So I've always used distilled white vinegar. This is always what I've used. You want 3/4 a cup per gallon. That is the ratio of acid to milk. 3/4 a cup of acid per 1 gallon of milk. Remember that we had 1 gallon, it was 2 half-gallon jars, so 1 gallon plus half of a half gallon, so 1/4 of a gallon. And so what I did was I have 3/4 a cup plus, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, I've got 3/4 a cup plus just a little extra. I have found, and I told my mom this when I was showing her how to do this, I have found that you do not have to be super exact when it comes to the vinegar or lemon juice. I've had a little less, I've had a little more, and it always turns out just fine. I've never ever had an issue, and I've never tried to be particularly exact because it's often like what you saw today where I've got, you know, a full jar and a random amount in another jar, or 2 full jars and a random, you know, so it's never exact and it always works out fine. So don't stress too much over that. Just, you know, try to get close to the right amount. 185. And now I'm stirring it constantly. It's getting foamy on top. It is steaming. It's very hot. So I'm going to stir back and forth the whole time. $190. And as soon as my thermometer reads 190, I turn off the heat. And then I've got my acid ready, and I'm going to go ahead and pour that right in. Take my thermometer out. You don't need it anymore. And then I like to just give this a quick stir to make sure that vinegar gets mixed in really well. And you will see it immediately start to curdle. You can tell based on my spoon here. And I joked with my parents when I was showing them how to do this. I take this baby over to the sink and I pick off all the little bits. It's very, it's almost like mozzarella. It's got a mozzarella consistency almost. And it just comes right off. And it is already so tasty. Now, in my personal opinion, the salt really makes this cottage cheese shine. You know, my parents and I, because the next step after the 30 minutes is to strain it. I'll show you. But we were standing over the sink eating it out of the strainer. And they were like, oh, this is so good. And I was like, just you wait. Just you wait till we salt it. Oh my gosh, it's so good. So hopefully you have a good quality salt. I use just Redmond real salt. And man, it's just, oh, it's spectacular. Okay, so we're good to go here. We are going to let this sit for 30 minutes. And then we'll move on to the next step. I'm going to come over to my butter and work on that. This wasn't a butter making video, so I'm not going to really get into that. Basically, you just, the butter that you saw already, that I showed you, you take it and you squeeze out all that buttermilk and you rinse it under cold water to try to get out as much of that buttermilk as possible. Okay, so it has been 30 minutes, and now what we're going to do is strain our cottage cheese. So what I have here in the sink, I've got my strainer, my colander, and then I've got a plastic Tupperware container down below, and we are going to just pour what's in our pan right into here. I'm going to just break it up here with my hands a little bit to make sure that it really can drain. And then I'm going to let this sit while I go pick up the new milk order. So I'll be gone for probably, usually takes me a little less than an hour to drive out there, do everything that I need to do, and then drive back. And then we will address this because there is a couple more things that need to happen here. However, if you're hungry while you're doing this, watch out because it's warm and it's chewy and it's so good. I could honestly stand here and eat probably half this by myself. And we haven't even salted it yet. It is so tasty. So I actually am going to move ahead with this because I can't leave to go get the milk for another like 45 minutes. And this has been draining for a while, so it's good. The container that I usually keep this in has watermelon in it right now, so I have to use, hopefully this will fit. There is one more step that I can't show you until I go get the new milk, but we can go ahead with this for now. So all I do is take it out of the strainer and break it up into whatever container I'm going to be keeping it in. And it can be in whatever size pieces. You know how at the store you can buy large curd, small curd. I like to have an assortment of both. I like some bigger curds and some smaller curds, so I just kind of roughly break it up with my hands. Some of it falls right apart into smaller curd, some of it doesn't and stays kind of larger. I'm going to pause here because this container is on the smaller side for sure before I add in the rest. As I'm sure you have gathered, as I've talked about this, I love a salty cottage cheese. Salt is really good for you, and because I don't eat any processed food, I don't get a lot of salt in my diet unless I add it, and so I am always very liberal with the salt. I have Redmond real salt, and it's a great salt. It has a lot of great things in it for you, and so I am very generous with the salt. So we're going to start here. I have more cottage cheese, but I'm going to go ahead and work the salt into what's already in here so I don't make a huge mess. And I always, I think that I have enough salt, and then I taste it and add more salt. No, actually, that's enough salt for that part. I'm not going to add any more yet. Let me add more. This is the last of it right here. And I do think it's going to fit in this container. It's going to be kind of tight, but it'll fit. Okay, and I'm going to add a little bit more salt right on top here. I'm telling you, the salt really elevates this cottage cheese. It takes it to a whole new level of flavor, and it is so good. So that's all I can do right now. There is one last thing that I like to do, but I can't do it just yet. So I will come back and finish filming this when I come back with the new round of milk. All right, I'm back, and I have fresh jars of milk. And it takes a little time for the cream to separate, so you can just start to see a cream line here. This hasn't fully separated, but that's okay. I want to get this finished. So here I've got my cottage cheese that we worked on together earlier. And this is optional because this technically is done. And you don't have to do anything else to it. But what I love to do is add some fresh cream to it. If you have raw milk, then obviously you're able to do this. If you don't have raw milk, you can buy half and half or heavy cream from the store to do this. And I would even possibly recommend that. It really makes this so good and creamy. But if you don't want to spend the extra money on the cream, you can just add milk. And same if it's raw milk. You can just add milk. You don't have to add the cream. In fact, with this having not fully separated, this isn't even fully cream. This is definitely some milk. And I add quite a bit. Honestly, probably By the time I'm done adding cream to this, it's probably going to be almost a cup because I like my cottage cheese. I want to drink it almost. I want it super, super, super creamy. And the cream mixed with the salt just makes it such a treat, you guys. This is my first way of kind of delving into homemade cheese. I haven't even tried to make mozzarella or anything yet. And I know that you can call this different things. I think some people call this like farmer's cheese. To me, this is cottage cheese. It's very, very close to what you buy at the store. So I call it cottage cheese, and the recipe that I found that inspired this, they call it cottage cheese. So that's what I'm going with. It's a really easy way to get your feet wet in the homemade cheese world, and it's just so good. It's actually like kind of shocking how good it is, and it's worthwhile. It's worth the ingredients. It's worth the time. A couple of little things for you before I let you go. Of course, I just come in with a fork and eat it throughout the day. I also, when I make egg salad, I add it to my egg salad. When I make chicken salad, I add it to my chicken salad. I've used it as the cheese in calzones. I've used it as the cheese on pizzas. There are so many applications for this. It does melt decently well. I have put it on grilled cheeses before. So many applications for it, and it's such a great way to add protein to whatever it is you're eating. That's why I like to have it like with my egg salad or chicken salad for lunch. I like to have a protein-heavy lunch if I'm able to, and so for that reason, I like to add it. I oftentimes put it on my breakfast. It's just so dang good. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that this keeps for a really long time. So I will use the last batch as an example. I ate the rest of the batch before this 3 days ago. I think I ate the rest of it for lunch, and I made that using 2-week-old milk, and then the cottage cheese then stayed in the fridge for almost another 2 weeks. So technically that was a 4-week-old almost dairy product. And when I had the rest of it for lunch, it was just as delicious as the day I made it. So this keeps really well. Mind you, I used raw milk. I can't say that timeline would work for pasteurized store-bought milk, but for my raw milk, it keeps for so long. I've never had it go bad. I've always eat it before it ends up going bad. So I just wanted to mention that. I hope that you found this useful. It's so easy, you guys. I was happy to show my parents because my mom texted me and was like, do you want this milk? We're not drinking it fast enough and we have extra every time. I was like, guys, make cottage cheese. And I said that through text a couple of times and they were like, yeah. I was like, do you want me to come over? I'll show you how to do it. It's so easy. So I did. I went over there and we did it together, and they were just blown away by A, how easy it is, and B, how delicious it is. So here, let me show you. Because now I've got this nice and creamy. See how creamy that is? I'm going to add more salt to this. I really like my cottage cheese salty. It's just so good, you guys. I really hope you'll try it. I love having it in the fridge. I love having access to it. Lunch is the most difficult meal for me. I have the same breakfast every morning, so that's easy. And I usually am pretty good about thinking about dinners ahead of time. I don't struggle with that too much. Lunch is so hard for me. Sometimes I don't have lunch because I can't think of anything. And then usually by the time it gets to be lunchtime, I'm like, well, now I have to make something, and I don't want to do that because I have to start dinner soon. So I love having the cottage cheese because it's a very nutrient-rich, protein-packed snack that I can eat, and it satisfies me pretty well and holds me over till dinner. So it's valuable for me to have in the fridge, and keeps me from having to buy it, and I don't have any of those nasty gums or preservatives in it. It's literally just milk and distilled vinegar. That's it. And salt. Yeah. So I had to do this today anyway, so I figured I would go ahead and show you how to do this. And if you have extra milk kicking around, or if you've been buying cottage cheese, it would be worth purchasing the extra gallon of milk to make it yourself, in my opinion. So I hope you'll give it a try. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions, or if you make cottage cheese, if you make any kind of soft cheese, let me know, because I want to start getting into exploring that a little bit more. I really want to try to make mozzarella. So thanks so much for hanging out with me. I can't wait to see you in my next video. Have faith, my friends, and keep moving forward. Bye.